Morning. Sorry if this is a little awkward. I've never stood between two monitors and presented before, so we'll see how this goes. So today we're going to talk about advancing the future of OR imaging and building a dedicated team. And we're going to go into the problems that we as an organization faced with this and how we solved them. So my takeaway for you guys today is to take some of what we did and hopefully you can apply it to your guys' spaces. So again, overview for today, we're going to go in the background of how the situation that we had, how we collaborated with the OR, operational management, performance metrics, equipment management, our dedicated OR rad techs, future growth and development, and then we have time at the end for questions and answers. So a little bit about us. I have Erin Willis here. She was a part of this. She's the Associate Director of Procedural Imaging. And her and I together worked really closely to build this team. A little bit about myself. I have 15 years of experience, predominantly in IR before I got into this, but 8 of my years was spent specifically in the OR based on how things were structured at OSU. And so currently I am the Perioperative and Procedural Imaging Manager at OSU, and I'm the very first in this position. It was a very new position when I first stepped into this. Disclosure statement that we have no financial relationships or commercial interest. So then a little bit about OSU. We have over 7 hospitals. We're going to talk mainly about our main campus, and within our main campus facility, we have 4 different surgical pavilions. We have over 1,400 patient beds, and then you guys can read the rest of the different facilities that we have going on. We're a nationally ranked academic medical center and have been for over 31 years. We are also a stroke and aortic center accredited as well. And then what we have going on, and this is applicable to my space, we are building a new tower for our hospital system. We're going to add an additional, it says 820 beds, but I think it ends up being around more like 500 because we're going to take some away from our main hospital. But with this, we are not subtracting ORs. We're going to add an additional 25 ORs that we will have to manage and support. So when I first got hired into this position, I had asked them, what is my first project? Like, what am I going to be stepping into? What would you guys like me to take on? And they said, we want you to build a dedicated OR team. We want you to help create it and work with people. And this had been something that they had attempted for over 10 years at OSU. We had attempted to build it. It just wasn't successful, and they wanted a new staffing model created with it, and we wanted to be able to track our results and see how it was going. So most of our observations were anecdotal. I'm sure a lot of you have heard, like, either the rad techs hate the OR or they love the OR. The surgeons want dedicated teams. There's literature out there to support dedicated teams and how it has better impacts on patient care, work efficiency, etc. So our initial key challenges that we walked into was increased imaging wait times, delays in cases because they didn't have the techs to support or get there in time, decreased RT skill set competency. Again, it's because they're just not comfortable. They're not spending all of their time up there. Different shifts go up there. So that was something we needed to address. Again, an inadequate staffing model. We also had a lack of metric dashboards. Nothing was really being tracked to see how things were progressing, and had any kind of oversight over the OR. And then we had limited equipment visibility. We had a lot of equipment, but we didn't have, again, oversight of what it was doing and how to prepare for future. And then finally, we just had an overall weak collaboration with the OR. We weren't being brought to the table to have discussions about how different surgical blocks, different hours, operating hours were going to impact us and our ability to support. So prior to us taking this on, we have over 50 ORs that we support. Again, it's across 4 different surgical pavilions. They're all attached, but they're all different. And we were staffing this on an average with 4 to 6 FTEs. Yeah, It's a lot. And at that time, we were doing roughly 350 imaging procedures in the OR that we were supporting, which makes up about 20% of the OR surgical volume. And then our equipment inventory at the time, we had 16 C-arms, 2 O-arms, 3 mini C-arms, a 3D C-arm, and then 1 CT Aero. So when we talk about our collaboration with the OR, like this is the most accurate depiction of what our collaboration with the OR looks like. It's very siloed. We all had our little buckets. And while some people would say it was a lack of respect for each other, it wasn't a lack of respect. It just, you didn't understand everybody's roles and what roles they played in patient care. And there was just no communication with each other either. So going into with the collaboration problems, we also knew there was workflow communication. Again, with these silos, we at OSU have a OR charge number for the X-ray department. Everybody knows it. And one of the problems was it became like a catch-all. Everybody called that number. There was no, oh, we need X, and it just became the number that they called. We also had staff and equipment availability. There was no, we had 16 C-arms, but I only had 4 techs to run it. So you can't run 16 C-arms at one time with that many people. And there was no conflict checkers put into the EMR system. So then they're overbooking and we have no way to staff it. And then triaging of procedures, again, across 4 surgical pavilions. When you go into the later hours, how are we triaging the patients based on like acuity level? And it wasn't happening. So everybody just booked at once and they expected everybody to just be there, which then was causing the imaging delays. So I put this up here, like develop a specialized team to provide focused support for OR procedures, ensuring streamlined workflows and enhanced efficiency. It sounds really nice, really easy. It was not an easy thing, and we knew that we needed to get a group of people together to collaborate and go through and look at and tackle the problems. So we got key stakeholders involved. We had surgeon representation, we had OR nurse leadership representation, we had scrub techs and nurses, along with diagnostic imaging was a part of this too, because until this team was fully built, we were going to have to rely on them to help to continue to support. So we would meet and we got together and did a swim lane, and the swim lane might be hard to see, but what it was different workflow processes for our key stakeholders, our surgeons, our rad techs. And what really stuck out was the starbursts, or the little orange. These were all the things that caused problems in the workflow. And so our goal was to address those. And some we were able to address easily, and then other ones we were not able to fix easily. So based off of this work group, we came up with an action plan for how to enhance imaging support. And it was to increase C-arm availability, establish an appropriate staffing model, develop performance metrics, enhance equipment visibility, and source additional staff. So the nice thing, like all of this happened, a lot of this happened simultaneously. It wasn't just one step and then the next. And then the other call out was, we had to be really thoughtful on the way that we implemented things, because we weren't stopping operations. So we had to decide, when was a smart time to implement something? When did we have to pivot, or when did we need to slow things down? So performance metrics. We had to find new ways to collect and evaluate data to support what we were doing. And so we leaned heavily on our data analytics experts to help take some of the data that we could able to find and put it into dashboards for us. And then we also Erin and I did a lot of manual collection and tracking and trending of this data. And some of them I'll show you later, they are clunky and we still don't like them, because there's just not a good way to see what we need to. So one of the first things we looked at was operational hours. when did we need to support people? When were our cases happening? And so this shows you our hourly volumes overview of like when the exams ended. So this was over a 2-year period, and we could see it's over 24 hours, and we could see that really we were operating between like 7 a.m. to like 7 p.m. so that we knew our peak staffing had to be in that time frame. And then next, we looked at, okay, when we know we have to operate those hours, do we need to operate 7 days a week? So we found this over 2 years, and it starts on Sunday and ends on Saturday, and we could see we really only needed to heavily staff Monday through Friday. And this is something that we still look at too as we continue to grow and as the ORs continue to expand. 25 hours additionally, we really, I mean, it's hard to say what kind of impact it's going to have right now, but we are watching. So operationally, we created a new cost center. And this new cost center was unique to imaging because there's no revenue. And so when there's no revenue, you have to be really creative in how you ask for FTE support. Because historically imaging, and still for all of the other cost centers, their FTE support is based on volume and increase of revenue. So when we went for this, our justification approach was a supportive service. So if we don't support the 20% of the OR volumes, if we can't support that, then there's a potential loss of 20% of the OR's revenue. So, and that tends to work for us pretty well. Everybody likes the OR revenue coming in. So this was our first staffing model, and our first staffing model was based off of our hours of operation. And the number of techs to the hours of operation. And we quickly realized as we were going through the first year that we were understaffed, and we needed to, and it wasn't painting the picture the best way possible. I will also say that when we went into this to add more staff, like all of you, I'm sure you guys are facing shortages. So a lot of our staffing is with agency currently. So again, that was the techs to hours of operation. So we collectively, we went through and we assigned the C-arms. And so we now, this is what we operate with, and did our new tower staffing plans with this. This is breaking it down to each piece of equipment that we have, assigning it hours of operation. We also have like a tech to equipment ratio. While most C-arms, we staff 2 C-arms to 1 tech because they can typically bounce between cases. You know, they only are needed at the beginning and the end of a procedure. We identified, some of my techs like to call them lockdown rooms. Our ortho service line specifically don't like the techs to leave. They want them there for the entirety of the case. So when we developed the staff, we knew we needed to put that in there. And so we can, and then we talk with the service lines. If we need to see, if we're seeing an increase, then we can increase the number of like 1-to-1 ratio rooms that we have with the equipment. But yes, so this gives us the most accurate piece of staffing that we have currently, the way we have this set up. So the other part of this is the rad techs, and like getting buy-in with them that this model was going to work. And so when we did this, we knew we had to fix the OR staff relationship. We needed them to want to be in the OR and feel a part of the team in the OR. And then we also had to work on the rad techs education. I wanted their confidence to match their competence. I wanted them to be comfortable there, to be excited to do these cases, and not to like dread being put up in the OR and living there. And then lastly was the phone fatigue. Like I told you, they were getting that phone was getting everything. So for the OR staff relationship, we really brought it down to the team level and had discussions with the OR charge nurses. And I remember having one with one of the charge nurses, because I'll remind you, like I worked in the OR for 8 years prior to me stepping into this position. So a lot of the nursing staff already knew me, and they were like, we just don't understand how this is going to work. if we have these cases, you have to support it. And I said, okay. I said, well, what happens if we don't have enough nurses to support the case? What do you guys do? And they said, well, we cancel the case. And I'm like, so why is it any different? And that conversation really was like turning of the tides for them. They started to see like that everybody was necessary for the patient support. So our team currently has daily huddles with the OR charge nurses, and they go over daily workflows. And now currently they are meeting and they say, hey, we've got this case. Are you guys okay to support it? Or do we need to kind of stagger things so that way you guys are not getting overworked? And it's been huge because now they feel like people actually care about their workload that they have. The next was the tech education. Again, we wanted to make sure their competency and skill set was where we wanted it to be. And so we really revised their onboarding and took an approach to make sure that we were capturing everybody and had check-ins and different progress milestones to make sure that they were 100% comfortable going into the cases and different types of cases. And then we wanted them to anticipate the surgeon's needs. Again, we talked about bringing the surgeons into that meeting with the workflow. And one of the things we talked about was you guys have to help. If you guys want these techs to anticipate your needs, you want them to be comfortable, then you have to help too. You have to help teach them. And so we relied heavily on them, and then one of our senior rad techs that had been in the OR and loved the OR for years to really help get the new techs that were coming in and the travelers comfortable with the surgeon's preferences. And then lastly, a really important part for me was that they understood the operational dynamics and expectations of the OR environment. I wanted them to feel 100% comfortable in the OR with the sterility involved, but not only that, but with patient care. Unfortunately, patients code in the OR, and I wanted them to realize that they too play an active role in that, and that they're not just something that stands on the wall. So we've done that as well. And we've taken it to our student level too, because we also have a program that runs through with clinical. So lastly, the phone fatigue. So when I talk about phone fatigue, this is one of our, it was an easy fix, but had a huge impact. So when we talk about how many phone calls, they were getting over 1,000 phone calls in 1 month on everything. So we did worked with the nurse educators. They redid the phone list in the room, educated the nurses on what number to call. And just by doing that simple education, they went from 1,000 phone calls a month to 300 phone calls a month. So now they weren't getting bogged down trying to run a C-arm and also answer the phone. So that was a nice win for them. So what did this look like? It wasn't an overnight process. It took us roughly 9 months to fully transition to the OR, and for us to completely support it 24/7. Again, when we looked at this initially, we talked about doing, can we staff it 24/7? But we didn't have the case volume to support it 24/7. We attempted it at one point, and we ended up changing it to call models. So for the most part, with currently the way we operate is our techs go on call after a certain hour at night. I think it's like 10 p.m. And then they are responsive to the hospital and responsible to respond to the hospital. And then we also do it with weekends as well. And that was another education piece with the OR too, was getting the OR nurses to remember that they had to call the techs in, because now they have like a 40-minute response time. So 9 months, but we did it. It was great. We're there currently. So what does our team look like? This is some of our team members. And like I said, 50% of them are agency, but I have never met a group of people that love working together. Like they absolutely adore coming into work together every single day, getting breakfast together. And I think it's just because they really truly, they get to work in a space that they just love to work in. They don't have to do portables anymore. They don't have to do their ER rotation. They just get to work in the environment that they want to work in. So how are we doing? So we looked at our performance metrics again. So we started looking into these, and this is our fiscal year 23 volumes, and we could see that we weren't capturing all of our equipment because we had it based off of a couple of orders. And so it wasn't really painting the picture of the equipment that was being utilized for the cases. And then so you can't really see and plan for growth when you can't identify which pieces of equipment are getting utilized. So this is fiscal year 24 and part of 25's volumes. So we made a couple adjustments with our orders and modified and had them go in and add our O-arms because our O-arms weren't being captured. So I couldn't really see how often we were using them, and did some adjustments with our mini C-arms as well. So when you can see, there's a big difference at the bottom of the graph because that's where our O-arms and our mini C-arms live. But it didn't really impact our fluoro volumes, but we were actually painting the cases that we were supporting. So when we talk about data that was clunky and we didn't like it, this is one that we don't like because it looks horrible. But what this was is all of our exams broken down by the service provider. And so this helped us to develop and create our staffing model for how many C-arms needed to be attached to which service line. And so we could take it down by service provider and then put them again into the, are they ortho or are they ortho spine, what service line? And then this one is fairly recent to us. This one actually breaks it down by the piece of equipment itself and how many exams are being performed on each piece of equipment. This is really useful because then I can go to the text and say, why are you always using this C-arm? Why aren't we using the other one? Is there a problem? Do we need to fix what's going on with it? Or do we need to get rid of it and get something in place that we're actually going to use? Which then brings us to equipment management. So when equipment management, we kind of tackled 3 different things. The quality control, where the daily QC is being done, so we could actively see the equipment, how it was operating and doing the daily checks. Inventory management, up until this point, there really hadn't been a whole lot of inventory management because we didn't have full ownership of the OR, the C-arms at that point until I stepped into this. And then resource stewardship, did we need to sunset things? Did we need to upgrade and plan for modern equipment? So quality control, previously it had been on a clipboard, on the machine, on a piece of paper, and the techs forgot to do it all the time. And so I was like, okay, well, what can we do to fix it? And they're like, we have phones that they all have. And I said, they're like, can we make it and put it on our phone? So we worked with some people in the organization and we developed this app, super easy. They can take it into the room, they can click on the app, and we can run reports again, but with this, but they select the type of equipment. Is it an O-arm? Is it a large C-arm? Is it a mini? Then they select the actual piece of equipment itself, and then they go through the daily checks that we have set in place. The nice thing about this is if it passes, great. If it fails, it immediately sends me and clinical and engineering an email that the equipment failed. And so this is actually going into like another bigger project that we are working on with clinical engineering to actually take it one step further, and it actually creates and populates a ticket with clinical engineering for us. So then we can track the downtime of the equipment. Clinical engineering can respond, tell us like what's going on with it. So we have better oversight of the equipment. So when, I'm sure some of you guys have heard this before, a surgeon goes to a conference and he sees this piece of equipment and he's like, I need it. But we didn't test it. We only saw it at the conference and then we order it. And then nobody likes it and it sits and it doesn't get utilized. So we had a piece of equipment that was exactly that. When I say it didn't get utilized, it took 45 minutes to calibrate it before you could even use it. And so, And then if you moved it to another room, it was another 45-minute calibration. So the techs didn't like using it. It was clunky. It wasn't really suitable for our operations. And so my background being IR, we see equipment come in all the time, but we have the demos and we get to try it before we buy it. And so to me, this was foreign. Why are we buying this piece of equipment and we've never actually seen how it operates? And we don't have everybody's input onto whether or not we want this piece of equipment. So we had been looking at 3D C-arms. And so a part of this was, I was like, I want to demo them. Like, I don't want to just purchase this sight unseen. I want it involved in an actual patient case so we can see how it's operating. Is the image quality what it says it's going to be? Does it move around the patient the way they say it's going to be? Because, you know, all of the patients that they demo at these things, they're perfect, ideal patients. And so we really wanted to see it and then have everybody's hands on it to make sure that this is what we wanted. So we got that set up in process. But a part of that is when you do equipment demos, you only get them for 2 weeks. So you have to have them fully up and running, connected with everything in 24 hours. And I don't know about you guys, but they hadn't been doing that. Our equipment would go through one person and then to the next person. So we got PACS, IT, RAD, physics, and clinical engineering together. And I was like, you guys have 24 hours. You all need to see this piece of equipment today, get it checked off in your little things, and then we need to get it up into the OR the next day. And they actually did it. And so now when we bring on new equipment, this is the process. They get their calendar invite, equipment's landing, it's time to get it into the OR. So when we decided to purchase the equipment, we did like 3 main things is what we focused on, and that was image quality and functionality. Again, was the equipment doing what it said it was going to do? Is the image quality as good as it says it's going to be? And then next was ease of use. Was the equipment easy to drive? Did the techs like to use the equipment? Did the surgeons like the equipment? And our surgeons, they want the techs to be happy, right? They want them to use a piece of equipment that they want. They want them to be comfortable with it. So the surgeons kind of leaned on the techs for their expertise on what they thought about the equipment. And then finally, the service agreement and training. I mean, we all know like equipment breaks, so we want to make sure that the service agreements are what we want it to be. And then another part for me was training, because our staff is a lot of it's agency, so I needed to make sure that we had training built in so that they could come back again and be trained, and we weren't just doing the initial training. So that was a part of it when we made the decisions. The only thing that we would probably do differently from the demos and moving forward if we purchased a new piece would be to have formal feedback forms that were sent out to the physicians and all of our relevant stakeholders, just to get a formal written opinion on what they thought about it. So future growth, we did all of this. We are continuing to collaborate with the OR. We recently just did a vertical expansion of operational hours. So we on our outpatients, so we added additional hours at the end of the day operationally. And this was the first time that when we were making this decision that we were brought to the table and the discussion of how is this going to impact imaging? What can we do to support you guys? And that was a really good feeling to know that they are actually bringing us and being thoughtful about how things are going to impact. Again, new tower, we're going to add another 25 ORs. And how do we support that? So it's a lot of discussion with the OR and the service lines that are getting added, so we can kind of anticipate the growth. And then ambulatory locations. I know a lot of our managers at the ambulatory sites are so excited because they have techs that just want to work in the OR. So they're excited to see how they can like apply this into their spaces. They've started to kind of do some things and collaborate with the OR and the schedulers to make sure that the block times at the ambulatory sites are set the way they should be, so they can staff appropriately and have people staffed in there every day of the week. So our current imaging operations and where we are today is still over 50 ORs that we support, but we are now currently staffing this with 17 FTEs for 24/7 support. We are doing currently 425 imaging procedures every month, but because an overall increase of surgical volume, it still only makes about 20% of the OR volume. And our equipment inventory is 16 C-arms, 3 O-arms, 3 mini C-arms, and then 3 3D C-arms. And then we'll add an additional with the towers opening, we're going to add an additional 6 for 22 C-arms. But big difference from the original 4 to 6 FTE support, again, when we started. So what's next for us? The 3D C-arms, like I said, we've already purchased them. They actually get delivered next week. But the cool part about this is for the first time, our techs are so excited about a piece of equipment. They are excited to use it in cases. They're excited for the growth and potential like service lines that we're adding on with the 3D C-arms. And that to me speaks volumes that they're that happy and with their skill set that they're ready to do more. And then after that, we are currently working on implementing flat plate imaging and for us to just solely own all of the flat plate imaging that's done in the perioperative space with portables. So like again, staffing models, how does it impact us? Do we need to add more FTE to support it based on the volumes that they're giving us? And then finally, my pie in the sky. We're really excited about this one. We are looking at getting a portable CT, head CT for the OR. And this will be huge if we can get this. This is going to really impact patient care and workflow efficiency within the OR. Where previously these patients would be taken out of the OR, go to straight to CT, and then potentially have to come right back to the OR. We're able to scan them in the OR, and then we're going to not have to have the patient travel throughout the hospital, and we're not going to have to get all of the OR set back up and tear it down. Again, we talked about references and how we approach this, and we did this. These are just a few articles that we use to support that dedicated teams impact patient care positively and work efficiency too. And then our lessons learned. So engaging the team is crucial for creating buy-in. And we did that with when we developed the call model for the techs. We approached it as a, what do you guys want to do? Here's your parameters. These are your options. And I gave them options based on what my experience had been with call, but allowing them to make the final decision was really impactful for them. And again, having them to have a voice in the equipment that they used or had an opinion on the demos really made them feel like their opinion mattered. And it does, because we want them to be happy and we want them to want to be there. Transparent open communication was extremely important. Again, communicating with the OR staff and our own team about what was going on and what's coming down the road. And then recognizing success and acknowledging the outcomes. And then finally, understanding that it's okay to fail and learn how to adjust moving forward. And I don't like to say fail. I use the word pivot a lot. We do a lot of pivoting. But you know, we're still succeeding and still growing.